It should start with a simple question. One of those innocent, almost naive questions that you might ask over a coffee with a friend, not expecting the answer to upend the way you see the world. The question is this: if success coaching actually worked the way it promises, why does the industry need to grow by 20% every single year? Think about that for a moment. If a doctor cured your illness, you wouldn't need to see them every year for the same illness. If a mechanic fixed your car, you wouldn't be back in 12 months for the exact same breakdown. But the success coaching industry, now valued at over $5 billion globally, grows at a rate that suggests something else entirely. It suggests that the product being sold is not a solution, but a subscription. For years, the industry has told you that your mindset is the problem, that your limiting beliefs, your lack of discipline, your failure to visualize hard enough, those are the barriers between you and the life you want. The promise is seductive in its simplicity. Change your thinking, and your reality will follow. But when you actually trace the numbers, when you open the tax filings and the longitudinal studies and the hidden dropout rates, you don't end up where they said you would. You end up at a much darker truth. The official story is well rehearsed. You have heard it in 1,000 different voices, on 1,000 different stages, in 1,000 different Instagram captions. It goes like this. There is a set of universal principles, morning routines, gratitude journaling, atomic habits, a growth mindset, that if applied with enough consistency and belief will unlock your potential. The coaching industry positions itself as the guide to these principles. You are not succeeding because you have not yet learned how the game is played. Pay for the map, pay for the mindset, pay for the accountability, and then finally, the gates will swing open. It is a beautiful story, and it is also, for the overwhelming majority of people who buy into it, a lie. Here is where the first crack appears. The coaching industry does not publish success rates. There is no FDA for mindset. There is no peer-reviewed registry of Tony Robbins graduates who went on to triple their income. The closest we have are the meta-analyses, and those tell a very different story. Studies that look at coaching outcomes rigorously, with control groups and long-term follow-ups, find that coaching has a moderate positive effect on self-reported well-being. That is not nothing. But when you compare those outcomes to the cost, the thousands of dollars, the hours of content, the emotional investment, the return is nowhere near what the marketing promises. The industry knows this. They have to know this. The top coaches are, by and large, not people who were lifted out of poverty by their own methods. They are people who were already connected, already capitalized, already in rooms where the real game was being played. Tony Robbins built his empire on the back of motivational speaking. He did not build a business from zero using his own techniques. The people who sell you the dream of self-made success are almost universally people who had a head start that they do not include in the curriculum. Notice what is happening here. We are peeling a layer. The surface answer is that success is a set of learnable skills. Layer 1 is that the teachers of those skills do not prove their results. Layer 2 is that their own success does not replicate the path they sell. And that brings us to the real mechanism, the thing that the industry cannot afford to teach you. The coaching model is not built on outcomes. It is built on enrollment. The product is not the transformation. The product is the hope that transformation is possible. And that hope must never be fully satisfied, because a satisfied customer stops paying. The industry grows by 20% a year. Not because 20% more people are becoming successful, but because 20% more people are entering the pipeline of belief. They buy the course. They implement the habits. They do not see the promised results. They blame themselves. They buy the next course. The machine feeds on guilt. Stop for a moment and let that land. The very mechanism that promises to free you is designed to keep you dependent. It is a loop. You are told you are the problem, so you keep buying solutions to the problem you are told you are. But what if you were never the problem in the first place? What if the problem is that the rules of the game were written by people who already owned the board? This is the part where the evidence gets uncomfortable. Let's look at what actually predicts success. Not what the coaches tell you, but what the data shows. The single strongest predictor of net worth is not mindset. It is not morning routines. It is not atomic habits. It is intergenerational wealth transfer. The Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances tracks this. Inheritance and family financial support account for more than half of net worth for the wealthiest households. You can journal until your hand cramps. You can visualize until your third eye is exhausted. If no one in your family has capital to pass on, you are playing a game where the starting line is 2 miles behind the people who are selling you the map. Thomas Piketty's work in Capital in the 21st Century showed that when the rate of return on capital exceeds the rate of economic growth, wealth accumulates faster than wages. This is not a mindset problem. This is a structural reality. The coaching industry cannot teach you to earn a return on capital you do not have, and it does not mention that the tax code is written to favor capital over labor. It does not mention that stepped-up basis allows inherited wealth to pass untaxed. It does not mention that the wealthiest families use trusts and shell companies to pay a fraction of the tax rate that a W-2 worker pays. Those details are not in the course. They cannot be, because the entire business model depends on you believing that your effort is the missing ingredient. Think about that for a second. The single strongest predictor of net worth is not something you can buy in a course. It is something you either have or you do not. If this kind of structural clarity lands with you, subscribe so you keep getting the facts that the coaching industry leaves out. And drop the word inheritance in the comments if you have ever felt like the starting line was not the same for everyone. But here is where it gets deeper. Because the industry does not just omit these facts, it actively frames them as excuses. If you point out that the system is rigged, the coach will tell you that you are playing the victim, that you are giving away your power, that the only thing standing between you and wealth is your belief that you cannot have it. This is gaslighting, disguised as empowerment. It takes a legitimate structural analysis and pathologizes it. You are not being oppressed by a system that concentrates wealth upward. You are suffering from a scarcity mindset. Pay $3,000 to fix it. This is the hidden truth that the industry refuses to teach. The mechanism that actually builds wealth is not mindset. It is access. Access to capital. Access to networks. Access to information that is not published on a 5-step blueprint. The coaching industry is the public-facing layer of a private system. It gives you the appearance of a ladder while making sure you never reach the top rung. It is not a conspiracy. It is a business model. And like any good business model, it optimizes for repeat customers, not for results. There is a reason that the coaching industry grows by 20% a year. The product doesn't expire because the problem is never solved. The goal is not to get you to the destination. The goal is to keep you on the road, and the road is paved with your self-doubt. Now here is the part that most people miss. The structure of the coaching industry mirrors the structure of the economy it claims to help you escape. Both are built on a small group at the top, extracting value from a large group at the bottom. The top coaches in the industry make millions, sometimes tens of millions, per year. They do this by selling a product that, for the vast majority of buyers, delivers no measurable return. The buyers, in turn, spend money they do not have, hoping to earn money they will never get. The coach gets richer. The student does not. That is not a bug. That is the design. The evidence for this is not hidden. It is in plain sight. Look at the SEC filings of any major coaching or training company. The profit margins are high. The customer retention rates are low. The marketing spend is enormous. The testimonials are cherry-picked. The refund rates are never disclosed. The industry operates in a regulatory gray zone because it sells a promise, not a product. And promises are very hard to sue over. But the darkest part of this secret is not the financial transfer. It is the psychological transfer. The coaching industry at its worst does not just take your money. It takes your sense of agency. It trains you to believe that your external circumstances are irrelevant, that your failure is always an inside job. This is not just inaccurate. It is dangerous. Because when you believe that your poverty is a reflection of your mindset, you stop looking at the structural forces arrayed against you. You stop demanding better wages, better housing policy, better tax systems. You turn inward, and you turn on yourself. You become the policeman of your own cage. If you have ever been stuck in a job that paid you just enough to survive, while watching the cost of rent, healthcare, and education rise faster than your paycheck, you know the quiet despair that comes with that gap. And if you were then told that the gap was your fault, that you just needed a better morning routine, you know the anger that comes with being blamed for a system you never designed. That anger is real, and it is legitimate, and it is exactly what the coaching industry banks on you not feeling, because an angry customer stops buying. The coaching industry has a structural incentive to keep the real mechanisms of wealth hidden. If everyone understood that the path to financial security is not a mindset shift, but a political and economic one, that it requires collective bargaining, progressive taxation, inheritance taxes, public investment, the entire industry would collapse. Because you cannot sell a $500 course on that. It would not fit in a downloadable PDF. It would require organizing, voting, striking, and demanding. Those things do not scale as a subscription product, and that is why the industry refuses to teach it. Not because the coaches are evil, not because they are part of a secret cabal, but because the business model does not support it. The product they sell is individual transformation. The solution that actually works is collective action. Those two things are incompatible, so the industry chooses to sell the one that keeps the lights on. Now apply this to your life. You have been told that if you just read the right books, listen to the right podcasts, wake up at the right hour, you will break through. And when you did not break through, you were told you just needed to try harder. But what if the real reason you did not break through is that the ceiling was never designed to move? What if the ladder you were climbing was built against a wall that the architects already knew was solid? This is not cynicism. This is pattern recognition. The coaching industry exists because inequality exists. It is a symptom, not a cure. It soothes the anxiety of being stuck in a system that is not designed for you. It gives you a sense of control that the real world does not provide. But control that is based on a false premise is not control. It is sedation. Here is what changes now. You stop looking for the secret formula. You stop blaming yourself for not unlocking a door that was never meant to open for you. You start looking at the structure. You start asking who wrote the rules. You start asking who benefits from you believing that the rules are fair. And you start looking for the people who are asking the same questions. Because the real transformation is not from broke to rich. It is from isolated to connected. From blaming yourself to understanding the system. From buying hope to building power. The system is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. And the design is based on a simple principle. Keep the people at the bottom, believing that the top is accessible through effort. That belief is what keeps the machine running. It turns millions of people into workers who accept low wages, who take on debt for education, who buy courses instead of demanding structural change. The coaching industry is the oil that lubricates that machine. You felt it, did you not? That moment when the promise clashed with the paycheck. The moment when you realized that no amount of hustle was going to close a gap that was engineered to widen. That was not your imagination. That was you, touching the glass ceiling with your bare hand. And the coaches told you it was your reflection. Here is the invitation, not to stop improving yourself. Self-improvement is valuable, but to stop treating it as a substitute for structural change. You can be the most disciplined, most positive, most intentional person in the room, and the room will still be built to funnel wealth upward. The coaching industry will never teach you that, because if you learn it, you stop being a customer. And if enough of you stop being customers, the industry stops existing. That is the secret they do not teach. Not because it is complicated, but because it is the one truth that would make the whole model obsolete. What comes next is not a new set of habits. It is a new set of questions. Who benefits from the story you were told? What would change if you stopped believing it? And what kind of power would you need to build? Not just to succeed within the system, but to change the system itself. The answers to those questions are not in a course. They never were. They never were. And yet millions of people continue to search for them every single day, spending money they cannot afford on promises that were never designed to be kept. The scale of this is not a footnote. It is a feature of the modern economy, and it tells you something important about how power actually operates. That moment when you realize the coaching industry itself is a subscription you never agreed to renew. If you want to keep following the paper trail to where the real money moves, subscribe. Because what comes next is the part the affiliate links don't mention. And in the comments, write the word that landed hardest. Customer. Because that is what you became. The moment you believed the system could be out-hustled. Let us trace the money one more time, but this time, follow it to the places the coaches do not want you to look. The coaching industry does not exist in a vacuum. It is connected through affiliate networks and cross-promotion to the very industries that create the conditions of scarcity that make coaching necessary. The same people who sell you the dream of passive income are often backed by the same venture capital firms that fund the gig economy platforms that treat you like a replaceable unit. The same influencers who tell you to quit your job and build a business are paid by the same companies that lobby against universal health care, making it nearly impossible to quit a job that provides insurance. The system is not a collection of disconnected pieces. It is a web, and the coaching industry is one of the strands that holds it together. Here is a concrete example that most people never connect. Look at the rise of the creator economy. The platforms that host coaching content, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, have a direct financial interest in keeping their users optimistic and under-earning. An optimistic creator will keep posting. An under-earning creator will keep chasing the algorithm, buying courses on how to hack it, spending money on ads and tools and coaching programs. The platform gets the content. The coaching industry gets the tuition. The creator gets the debt. Everyone in the chain makes money except the person doing the work. And the coaching industry is the middleman that keeps that engine running. It convinces you that the platform is fair, that visibility is meritocratic, that if you just optimize your thumbnail and your hook and your attention curve, the algorithm will reward you. But the algorithm is not a meritocracy. It is a machine designed to maximize engagement, which means maximizing emotional intensity, which means surfacing content that triggers anxiety and envy and the desperate need to improve. The coaching industry feeds that emotional cycle and sells you the solution to the problem it helped create. This is not theory. This is observable. The coaching content that performs best on social media is the content that makes you feel inadequate. The hook is always a version of, "You are doing it wrong." The solution is always a version of, "I can show you the right way." The follow-up is always a version of, "But only if you buy my course." The cycle is engineered. The inadequacy is manufactured. The solution is priced. And here is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. The coaching industry has learned to weaponize the language of personal growth to obscure its own economic incentives. When a coach tells you that you are playing the victim, they are not actually trying to empower you. They are trying to shut down a line of questioning that would expose their business model. Because if you start asking structural questions, you stop being a customer. So the industry trains you to see structural questions as a character flaw. Critical thinking is reframed as a scarcity mindset. Doubt is reframed as resistance. Skepticism is reframed as fear. The vocabulary of therapy is repurposed as a defense mechanism for an industry that cannot survive scrutiny. Stop here for a moment and notice the brilliance of this move. The industry has taken the tools of self-awareness and turned them into a shield against accountability. If you question a coach's results, you are told you are projecting. If you ask for evidence, you are told you are not ready. If you point out the structural barriers to success, you are told you are giving away your power. Every critique is met with a psychological explanation that places the fault back on the critic. It is a closed loop. There is no way to critique the industry from within its own framework, because the framework defines critique itself as a symptom of the problem. This is the same mechanism that cults use, and it is not an accident. The coaching industry borrowed its language, its structures, and its retention strategies from the very traditions it claims to have transcended. The guru is a secular pastor. The course is a tithe. The community is a congregation. The testimonials are conversion narratives. The skepticism is heresy. The industry is not a new form of education. It is an old form of religion, stripped of theology and dressed in athleisure. And like any religion, it asks you to take a leap of faith, to believe before you see, to trust the process even when the results do not materialize, to keep paying even when the promise remains unfulfilled. The leap of faith is the only thing that keeps the model running. Because if you demand to see before you believe, the industry collapses. You demand refunds. You demand transparency. You demand outcomes, and the industry cannot provide those things because the outcomes are not in its control. Here is the ugly truth that sits at the center of this whole machine. The coaching industry cannot guarantee results because results are not determined by mindset. They are determined by the distribution of power in the economy. And the coaching industry has no influence over that distribution. It can teach you to be more confident. It cannot teach the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. It can teach you to network better. It cannot open the boardroom doors that are closed by family connections and old money. It can teach you to invest. It cannot give you the capital to invest with. The coaching industry sells agency in a world where agency is limited by structure, and that gap between what it promises and what it can deliver is the exact gap that keeps its customers coming back. Because here is the cruel irony. The coaching industry is actually right about one thing. Your mindset does matter. The way you think about your situation shapes your actions. But the industry deliberately misidentifies what is wrong with your mindset. Your mindset is not wrong because you lack belief. Your mindset is wrong because you have been trained to believe that your individual effort is the only variable that matters. The coaching industry does not need to fix that belief. It needs to reinforce it, because a person who believes effort is everything will keep trying harder. And a person who keeps trying harder will keep buying the tools to try harder. The real mindset shift is not from doubt to belief. It is from individual blame to structural awareness. It is from self-improvement as salvation to collective action as leverage. It is from seeing yourself as a project to be fixed to seeing yourself as a participant in a system to be changed. That shift does not require a course. It does not require a coach. It requires a single, uncomfortable admission that you cannot hustle your way out of a rigged game. And once you make that admission, something strange happens. The pressure releases. The guilt dissolves. The constant voice in your head telling you that you are not doing enough quiets down, because you stop trying to solve a structural problem with individual effort. You stop expecting the impossible from yourself. You stop measuring your worth by your ability to overcome a system that was engineered to keep you in place. That release is the real transformation, and it is free. It costs nothing to stop blaming yourself for a system you did not design. It costs nothing to see the mechanism for what it is. It costs nothing to stop buying the promise and start asking the question. The coaching industry cannot sell you that release because the release comes from rejecting the premise that you need to be sold anything at all. And that is why the industry grows by 20% every year. Not because it works, but because the alternative, seeing the system clearly, accepting its shape and deciding to act collectively, is a harder path. It is a path that does not offer instant gratification. It does not give you a 5-step plan. It does not promise that everything will change in 30 days. It asks you to be patient. It asks you to organize. It asks you to think not just about your own escape, but about the structure that traps everyone. The coaching industry cannot offer that path because the coaching industry is a product of the very structure it claims to help you escape. It is not a ladder out. It is an escalator that runs in place. It gives you the sensation of movement without the reality of progress. It charges you for the feeling of climbing while keeping you on the same floor. Look at the evidence one more time. The coaching industry has been growing for decades. Income inequality has been growing for decades. The richest 1% now hold more wealth than the bottom 50% combined. The coaching industry has had more time, more tools, and more customers than ever before. And the gap has only widened. If the coaching industry actually worked, the gap would have narrowed. The fact that it has not tells you everything you need to know about what the industry actually does. It does not close the gap. It manages your emotional response to the gap. It gives you a way to feel like you are doing something while the gap continues to grow. It is not a solution. It is a coping mechanism. And like any coping mechanism, it works best when you do not examine it too closely. But you are examining it now. And that is the crack in the machine. The moment you stop seeing the coaching industry as a path to success and start seeing it as a symptom of the very inequality it claims to solve, you step outside the loop. You are no longer a customer. You are no longer a believer. You are an observer of the mechanism. And from that position, you can make different choices. What does that look like in practice? It does not mean you stop learning. It does not mean you stop trying to improve your skills or your knowledge or your health. It means you stop paying for the illusion of transformation. It means you stop outsourcing your hope to people who profit from your doubt. It means you start asking different questions about where real power comes from and how ordinary people have actually changed the conditions of their lives, not through a course, but through organization. Look at the labor movements of the early 20th century. Look at the civil rights movement. Look at the fight for the 8-hour workday. Look at the unionization drives that built the middle class. None of those transformations came from a coach. None of them came from a morning routine. They came from people understanding that their individual struggles were connected. They came from collective action. They came from solidarity. The coaching industry will never teach you that history, because that history contradicts its entire premise. If the solution to economic injustice is collective power, then the individual path to success is a distraction. And the coaching industry is the largest distributor of that distraction on the market. You can see this in the way the industry frames wealth. Wealth is never presented as a collective resource that could be redistributed. It is presented as the natural outcome of personal excellence. The wealthy are not beneficiaries of a system that concentrates capital. They are proof that the system works. Every millionaire coach is held up as evidence that anyone can make it. But that evidence is circular. They are the people who made it. They are the ones who get the platform. The ones who did not make it are silenced. The dropout rate is invisible. The debt is private. The failure is silent. This is selection bias disguised as proof. The industry only shows you the winners. It never shows you the thousands of people who bought the course and ended up in worse financial shape. It never shows you the refund requests. It never shows you the credit card statements. It curates reality to sell a narrative. And you have been trained to accept that curation as evidence. But you do not have to accept it anymore. You have the numbers now. You have the mechanism. You have the history. You have the understanding that the coaching industry is not a solution to inequality. It is a tax on hope. And that understanding changes your relationship to the entire category. When you see a course promising to transform your finances, you no longer feel the pull of possibility. You feel the weight of a design. You recognize the shape of the mechanism. And that recognition is a kind of immunity. Not because you are smarter than anyone else, but because you have seen the pattern. And once you have seen it, you cannot unsee it. The coaching industry will continue to grow. The marketing will continue to improve. The testimonials will continue to be cherry-picked. The algorithms will continue to surface the content that makes you feel inadequate. The cycle will continue for as long as there are people who have not yet seen the pattern. But now, you are no longer one of them. The question is not whether you will find the secret formula. The question is what you will do with the clarity that there is no secret formula. The question is whether you will use that clarity to stop running on the treadmill, whether you will use it to look for the people who are also stepping off, whether you will use it to build something that is not a subscription, something that does not require you to keep feeling broken, something that is not a product. The coaching industry sells you a map to a place that does not exist, and it charges you for the privilege of looking for it. But the real map is not a PDF. It is the understanding that the terrain was never what they said it was. The real journey is not from poor to rich. It is from believing you are alone to knowing you are not. And that is a journey no course can sell you. Because the moment you buy it, you are already back in the loop. The only way out is to stop looking for the exit they designed and start building your own. Not with a new set of habits, not with a new morning routine, but with a clear-eyed recognition of where you are, how you got there, and who you need to stand with to change it. The industry will tell you that this is giving up. They will tell you that you are surrendering to cynicism. But you know better. You know the difference between cynicism and clarity. Cynicism says, nothing can change. Clarity says the change you were promised was never real. So you need to look for a different kind of change. A change that does not begin with a purchase. A change that begins with a question. That question is not new. It has been asked by every generation that faced a system that was not designed for them. The question is simple. What would it take to build a world where success is not a lottery? Where your starting point does not determine your ending point? Where the coaching industry is not a necessary bandage on a wound that keeps getting reopened? The answers to those questions are not in a course. They are in history. They are in the archives of labor movements and tenant unions and mutual aid networks. They are in the stories of people who did not try to beat the system alone, but changed it together. The coaching industry will never tell you those stories, because those stories do not end with a purchase. They end with a movement. And a movement cannot be downloaded, but it can be joined. And that is where the real work begins. Not in a planner, not in a 5 a.m. alarm, not in a course you cannot afford, but in the slow, patient, unglamorous work of seeing the system for what it is and deciding that you will no longer pay the tax on hope. You have looked at the mechanism now. You have seen how the industry grows by 20% a year. You have seen how it feeds on guilt. You have seen how it pathologizes structural critique. You have seen how it dresses itself in the language of liberation while reinforcing the very conditions that keep you stuck. And you have seen that the solution it sells is the problem it creates. So what do you do with that knowledge? You do not go back to buying. That chapter is closed. You do not stay in the loop. You step out. You stop measuring your worth by your ability to overcome a system that was engineered to keep you in place. You stop treating your financial situation as a reflection of your inner state. You stop looking for the guru who will finally unlock the door, because the door was never locked. It was a hologram. It was projected by the industry to make you believe there was a path where no path existed. The real path is not through the door. It is away from the room entirely. It is in building a different kind of room with different people. It is in asking, not how you can climb the ladder, but how you can shorten the ladder. How you can make it so that fewer people have to feel the desperation that drives them into the arms of the coaching industry in the first place. That is the work that matters. And it is not a product. The coaching industry will continue to sell its maps to nowhere. But you no longer need a map. You have a compass, and it points not toward wealth, but toward clarity. Not toward escape, but toward understanding. Not toward individual success, but toward collective power. And that is the one destination no course will ever teach you to reach. Verify, warn. Verbatim. Repetition.